Hello and welcome to the AviaDev Insight Africa Connectivity Update for September 2025. We are the podcast that dives deep into the stories behind the route developments to, from and within the sub-Saharan African continent. I'm your host, Jon Howell, the CEO and founder of AviaDev Africa. We are a platform dedicated to supporting fleet and network development across the continent. And we are back after a short summer or northern hemisphere summer hiatus. I've been hiding out in the south of France. My guests have been on secret aviation missions around the globe. One of them has even been celebrating a birthday. I'll leave you to guess who that may have been in August. And for today's intros, I am going to channel my inner Trevor Noah, because sometimes aviation could use a little more comedy. He's always great for entertainment. So our first guest has probably spent more time studying flight schedules than most of us spend binge watching Netflix. You know how African connectivity sometimes feels like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded? Behramjee Ghadially is the guy who takes that cube, gives it a shake, and somehow makes it work. In aviation, everybody talks about delays, delayed flights, delayed baggage, delayed coffee service. But Behramjee, he's the guy who tells airlines how to stop delaying progress. He looks at routes, numbers, and trends the way your mum looks at a WhatsApp forward, with total focus and just a little bit of suspicion. And somehow he turns all of that into strategies that actually get planes flying where they should, or at least most of the time. No comment, Sean. Leave it.
No comment.
Leave it.
No comment.
Leave it. And our next guest, he's basically the human version of Flight Radar 24. If there's a plane flying anywhere in Africa, or honestly anywhere on Earth, Sean Mendis probably knows where it came from, where it's going, and how much the guy in seat 14B paid for his ticket. The rest of us scroll on Instagram endlessly. Sean scrolls airline timetables for fun. He's the person airlines call when they want to understand not just how to fly, but how to make flying actually make sense and make money. And the scary part, he explains it so clearly, you'll suddenly believe you could run an airline yourself, right up until you check your bank balance. So with our experts introduced and strapped in, it's time to start our taxi out. As always, the disclaimer that the opinions of my guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of AviaDev. So let's get into the discussion. Welcome to the September 2025 AviaDev Insight Africa Connectivity Update. Okay, we are going to start with a little East African safari, because all of the national airlines in the region have been in the press for different reasons. And I know we have a lot of listeners from this part of the world, a lot of people obviously interested. It's very much an aviation powerhouse on the continent. So we are going to start with an airline that has been in every single podcast since we started this, which is Ethiopian Airlines, who've just announced their latest financial results, but they also have some other news impacting their leadership. So let's start with the financials. Sean, talk to us straight away about obviously what the numbers say and what they've reported, because it's very fresh off the pages.
Yeah, Ethiopian is always in the news because Ethiopian's always doing something. And there's really no surprise when we look at the numbers. Ethiopian has continued to grow in the 2024-2025 financial year. It has added more planes, it has added more passengers, it has added more revenues, and consequently, it has also added more profits. So, according to the numbers that were released partly in the public statements, partly through news articles and so forth, it appears that they've had revenue of 7.6 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars, and of which profits of 1.05 billion, once again with the B, dollars. So quite honestly, I think Ethiopian has made almost as much profit as the rest of the African airlines have made losses. And there's really not much we can say more about this. We've dissected what Ethiopian does literally down schedules of their Nairobi flights in great detail. And if you go back and listen to the various podcasts, you'll understand so many things they do right, which come together and deliver such absolute whopping profits for any airline anywhere in the world, let alone an African airline. So kudos to them once again, and kudos to Mesfin and everyone else.
Yeah, and part of this is the continued iteration of the network and all of the little changes that we've talked about. And they've, of course, made some announcements, and they are making some changes to the network. They are increasing Abuja to 10 weekly flights from the end of October, and they've also got a few other changes to the network. So just want to run us through those as well?
Absolutely. And here's a big shout out to our new media partner, Jim at Aero Routes, who compiles a lot of this regularly enough for us to have easy reference to rather than have to go and dig through the GDS ourselves, even though we do as a hobby. But he puts it all in one place. And yes, Addis to Abuja, no big surprise. They had added the third bank flights from Addis to Accra last year. They added Addis to Lagos in May this year, I think. I just flew on it last week
June.
on two of those third bank flights to Lagos. Those are doing pretty well. And Abuja is the next one on that. The main difference here is that with Abuja, they're only starting with 3 weekly flights rather than the usual 6 or 7 weekly that they usually do. So Abuja is going to be an afternoon, a third bank departure from Addis, returning on the early morning. And just looking at that schedule, it's pretty obvious that this flight is designed to feed to and from the Gwangju, because they have an afternoon Gwangju flight which connects on the same days of the week and on the same schedules and banks as this. Even when I flew out of Lagos on the overnight flight on Friday last week, I'd say about 75% of the passengers were on the way to Gwangju. It's almost certainly this is what that market they are targeting is, and I'm pretty sure that it is going to be successful. Ethiopian has a huge amount of demand from Nigeria. They're already flying their largest possible aircraft, the 350-1000 to Lagos. They're flying 350-900 or 777 to Abuja. It's the next iteration of their growth, and I expect to probably see this go up to 6 weekly or daily once they've taken delivery of a few more Maxes.
Yeah, and you see the same things, Behramjee? There's strong demand here, and Sean's obviously picked up on the Gwangju link.
Firstly, regarding the Ethiopian results, they're very commendable, no doubt. Just to clarify, it's for the Ethiopian Aviation Group in full, not just Ethiopian Airlines by itself. That's one thing to clarify. Secondly, regarding their Abuja flight, their yields on Abuja are very strong. They always have very high load factors in their J cabin, and their economy class prices are also way higher versus Lagos. The main reason for that is they virtually have no competition from Abuja to East and South Africa until just recently. Uganda Airlines started flying to Abuja with a triangle to Lagos. But that's not, that's not, Ethiopia do not consider them competition for a while. So that monopoly, virtual monopoly standing in the marketplace helps a lot. Plus for Middle East and Asia, there's no Emirates for them to be bothered about. There's only Qatar Airways. So year over year, yes, but Turkey does not connect Asia properly to Abuja.
Yeah,
it's mainly for Europe. So that unless the Nigerians get STPC in Istanbul, which I don't think so is possible that easily.
Nah.
Last year in 2024, Ethiopian uplifted about 207,000 passengers round trip versus 222 in 2023. So just a 7% drop. Their top markets for Abuja, actually to also state that 20% of Ethiopians' Abuja traffic is point to point. 80% is transit, which is quite decent compared to what other routes are. Their top market, apart from Addis Ababa, the top transit markets are Nairobi. Nairobi is their biggest transit market from Abuja, 16,000 passengers. Then Johannesburg, 12,000, Jeddah, 9,000, Cairo, 6,000, Entebbe, 7,000, and Guangzhou, 7,000. So Guangzhou, yes, it's in the top 10, but the volume is not as big as Lagos for obvious reasons. But it's 7,000 passengers. That's about less than 20 passengers round trip each day.
Yeah, but if you're looking at the schedule, which this one is at, if you look at all the others over there, there is no other third bank feeder on this. Nairobi doesn't feed third bank. Jeddah doesn't feed third bank. Certainly O&D is going to be there. But I expect this is primarily targeted at third bank and only third bank. The only logical route targeting that is Gwangju. Also, Gwangju, in addition to that, India. India feeds multiple routes from India feed this. Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, and Chennai are all fed into this bank as well. It's a possibility they're targeting an addition in the India market, but India to Abuja is not as large as India to Lagos has been. My gut says Gwangju is the main thing. I was shocked to see the volume of Nigeria to China passengers in terms of the total. The flight was completely full, and as I said, 70 to 75% of those passengers, literally, as they were checking in, where are you going? Gwangju. Where are you going? Gwangju. And like everybody was going to Gwangju.
Yeah, because also their prices from Lagos to Guangzhou are very competitive. And Nigerians also appreciate that Ethiopian gives also at times excess baggage free. Like sometimes they have a promo during the season, third suitcase is free, or you can upgrade your initial 2 free bags to 32 kilos without paying extra. All these nitty-gritty things help. Plus also, I don't know if it's still on the case, they fly same plane service Lagos to Guangzhou and back on one of the
Now, Lagos is now the 350-1000. They need that 350-1000 capacity. And Gwangju is on the 777-300, I think, now, isn't it?
But the
I think all of them are.
350-1000 flies every day in the daytime?
Lagos, every day I've seen it, it's been flying that. The day flight is the 1000. It may be a 900 swapped in here and there, but it's scheduled as the 1000 for daily.
Yeah, okay, I'm seeing it on Amadeus now. Yeah, correct. So on Abuja, the reason why they opted for a 737 MAX 8 and not a wide body just for the 3 additional flights, because the Abuja market size demand is not as volumetric as Lagos. So it was a good move just to start.
They also don't have wide bodies. They don't have spare wide-body capacity on the third bank. The third bank is largely developed as a max bank, with the wide bodies just feeding the Romes, the Indias, and even the Johannesburg is scheduled as a max now on the third bank. So certainly there's a lot of swaps. I'd say more often than not. I flew on that also a few weeks ago, and it was a 787 swap for the max. But I'd say 80% of the flights on that third bank are 737.
Yeah, but also Abuja would not deserve a wide body initially for the incremental flying.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. If you look in terms of the Lagos and the Accra, which probably could warrant that on the third bank. And I think here's also part of the problem. The third bank is a directional bank. The actual third bank flights, so the ones which are actually arriving or departing in the afternoon, are slightly weaker in terms of load, while the returns of those flights, whether that's coming into the morning bank or coming into the night bank, have a lot wider range of destinations to do it. So putting in a max allows you to balance that, where you're filling up, even if you're filling 70% of a max, that's not too bad if you can fill up the other way around. But a wide body risk is a lot higher profile, and the wide bodies are better deployed on slam trunk routes where they definitively can make money. So I think they've got a pretty strong business case for these maxes on the third bank. They've tried it with Accra, which was successful. They tried it with Lagos, which seems to be successful. They tried it with Abidjan, which failed, and that I can't say I'm totally surprised. Abidjan's a very different market and dynamics. But it is definitely interesting. I expect to see this third bank out and back, this split bank, so to speak, schedules where it goes off third and comes back something, and goes off another bank and comes back in third. I expect to see some more markets with that kind of scheduling. And it's interesting because potentially they could be doing that with a lot more of Southern Africa. They could be opening up a Cape Town. They could be opening up maybe a Durban. A lot of points in Southern Africa, which right now are right about on the edge of that overnight bank, which pretty much ends at Harare. But if they really wanted to, a lot of Southern Africa opens up with that split bank if they choose to do that.
Understood.
Super. And Eastern Europe, we've had that chat as well. Eastern Europe, they're doing Athens with it already. They could hit other points. They're doing Istanbul on split bank as well, if I'm not mistaken. So they could do. There's a lot of options, and I think the MAX is a really versatile plane for Ethiopian. Now that the safety and the other issues are ironed out.
Also, this schedule, the timing is more geared towards, I would say, Abuja, Africa, intra-Africa flying. That's where the high yield is also.
On the overnight. On the overnight return, yes. But remember, the feed into it is very limited on third bank, but it is fed by Gwangju, which arrives on the third bank, and fed by India. And that's why I'm saying the inbound feed is probably why they have targeted a 3-weekly on that schedule rather than 2 and 2 off different schedules and different feeds. Let's see. As I said, I would not be surprised that by October or November, we will see this increase to 6 weekly at a minimum. I would not be surprised at all to see that.
All right, fantastic. We've talked about Abuja, and you talked quite rightly, Behramjee, about Ethiopian as a group doing its report. And of course, that's the MRO, and it's the university and the hotels and all the other things that go into it. And we did also get some news that the group CEO is going to be stepping down in 2026. I think he was supposed to have retired by now anyway, but he stayed on a little bit longer. And that's Mesfin Tasew, who won the Lifetime Achievement Award this year at AviaDev. So Sean and I did get to spend quite a bit of time with him. And yeah, just a bit of reaction to that, I think, would be nice, because the one thing I would say on this is that the amazing thing that Ethiopian continue to do is to have continuity. So do we feel there's no doubt there'll be a successor lined up? We'll find out in due time. I'm sure that will be announced ahead of time to make everybody feel comfortable, but it just doesn't upset anybody thinking, oh no, they're going to suddenly bring in an expat or do X, Y, and Z. It's going to be another person that's cut from the same cloth that's come through the ranks. Is that fair, Sean? I can't see it being any other way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I pride myself, like they used to have Kremlinologists during the Cold War, where you'd study pictures of who's standing in what position and everything. So my Ethiopian airlineology at this point says that the two frontrunners to succeed Mesfin at this point, again, no surprise for people who keep up with Ethiopian, are probably going to be a choice between SIS, who is currently the CEO of ASky and who effectively was in the shortlist when Mesfin got the job after Tewolde left. And he took Mesfin's job at ASky in Togo at the time. And I think the one which is probably more likely right now is going to be Lema, who is currently the Chief Commercial Officer. And Lema's taken a higher profile over the last couple of years. You see him when when he's not doing a route launch, Lema's the guy out there cutting the ribbon. He's doing media's interviews. He's doing stuff like that. And I think, again, I won't pretend to know what the boardroom shenanigans are at Ethiopian right now, but my gut feeling says it's going to be one of those two, and I'd say probably about 75% sure it's going to be Lema in that case. And it's a sure pair of hands. These are all lifers. These are people who have grown up in the Ethiopian system. They know the system. They've run the system. There's not going to be a sudden fleet change or strategy change the day that the CEO changes. It's going to be very much more of the same, and probably just stylistically in terms of a few management changes, and the style of how they do things may change slightly, but not the substance.
Yeah. Sorry, Behramjee. It's not for you, my friend. It's not your next role. Any reaction? What do you think? It's obviously not a surprise to us that he's going to retire.
No, the good thing is, unlike majority of other African carriers, Mr. Mesfin has maintained that sense of continuity and stability, and has encouraged growth at Ethiopian Airlines. So and also laser focused team that he has in his executive management. Yeah, as I assume it will be like what Sean said, his success will also follow the same path, because why ruin what has already been established? It's been doing well. The executive management there does not seem to have an ego problem like some Middle East carrier CEOs might have. All in all, it's okay.
There's definitely some drama there too, but it's not as public as it may be elsewhere.
Yeah, it always feels to me like it's some sort of professional graduate scheme. So if people who are aware, you do a graduate scheme after qualifying and they'll do 3 months in this department, 3 months in that department. It's normally longer than that. But whenever I speak to anyone and you build that relationship, suddenly they've moved, they're in a different airline through the group, or they're doing something different. And I think that's amazing because they're obviously picking up skills, and a lot of these guys and girls, they give their whole lives to the airline, and talked about that in his interview, which I'd recommend everybody goes and listens to, that he's given his life to the airline and to the country.
And I think this is where he deserves his retirement. He's already extended it by 2 years, he says, and that ends next year. And I don't think anybody can argue that if Mesfin wants to rest, Mesfin deserves his rest.
Where's the first place he goes on the network, Sean? Come on, you're good at this. You're an
the first place he
Ethiopianologist or whatever you want to call yourself.
I think the first place he goes is home, and as he said, has dinner and breakfast with his wife and children.
Yeah. That would be nice.
There's one route we forgot to talk about, Entebbe of Ethiopian.
We mentioned the Abuja, but we didn't mention the other routes. Let me just give you a quick thing, and then you jump into the deep dive on Entebbe, because in addition to Abuja increases, they're increasing service to Madagascar in Antananarivo. But interestingly, they are reducing service in January to both Seychelles and Nosy Be. And that's an interesting thing, because we've traditionally seen a lot of additional capacity being added to Indian Ocean routes in the winter, but this is the reverse. Now, it could be we're just talking about a 2-month window, so it could just be simply maintenance or a tour operating contract lost or whatever. But it's something we just should keep an eye on, because we've been very bullish on Indian Ocean routes, and now we're seeing actually a slight reduction on that for the first time. So just something to flag over there. But the other final thing, which are actually increasing their Entebbe flights up to 28 weekly. So that's going to be completing the set of 4 daily flights to Entebbe, up from the current 3 daily, and I think it's 24 or 25 times a week. So when that goes up to 4 daily, that's a remarkable amount of capacity. And I know Behramjee has numbers on Entebbe and the Ethiopian does there that are going to be quite fascinating.
Yeah, go for it, Behramjee. Talk to us about Entebbe.
Yes, I would like to state I did the numbers research, and it was very impressive what Ethiopian has managed to do at Entebbe. In the last year, in 2024, they uplifted 499,000 passengers, which is basically 500,000 passengers, which was a 26% increase versus 2023. 2023, they did 395,000 passengers. 13%, 13% of Ethiopian's Entebbe traffic was point-to-point, and 87% of it was transit. Now, a trick question for John, like I like to do always. Can you guess the number one transit market for Ethiopian out of Entebbe?
London.
Oh, not at all. London does not even figure in the top 10.
Johannesburg. I don't know.
No, even that does not.
Nah.
Number one is Saudi Arabia by a long way.
Saudi and Dubai is my guess. Yeah, Saudi and Dubai.
So Jeddah's number one, 28,000. Riyadh number 2, 27,000. And then Dubai number 3, 19,000. But number 4 will surprise Sean and you both, is Amman. 18,000. Oh. Yeah.
And what's behind this? Can you give us some idea as to what it is? Is it labor? Is it construction labor, and it's other household labor?
All forms of labor. Basically, right. Saudi Arabia needs skilled labor, and they're looking at all avenues. Africa, in the subcontinent, Far East, doesn't matter, as long as you have a good, clean record with the police in your country, you're eligible.
You know what's fascinating, Behramjee? I found when you're mentioning the total number that Ethiopian carried last year from Entebbe, they carried 499,000 passengers. Uganda Airlines, the national carrier, carried 420,000 passengers last year. So they actually were larger than the national airline in Uganda. And I think that's also interesting to look at.
Yes, as Sean mentioned earlier on the podcast, before we started recording, they fly 4 times a day now, well, eventually. 2 flights are on a wide body and 2 flights are on narrow body. So they must be grabbing a majority of the cargo market as well, both inbound and outbound too from Entebbe. Their biggest intercontinental market is Mumbai with 17,000. As far as long haul is concerned, Toronto is the number 1 market at 11,000. Sorry, Guangzhou. Guangzhou is 13,000, followed by Toronto at 11,000. Yes,
I think that's interesting. What we're actually seeing is that there's a number of different destinations all in that 10,000 plus range, which shows that it's not like they are overly dependent on Saudi or whatever else. Certainly those are the largest. But even if Uganda Airlines came in nonstop with competition in many of these markets, there are enough of these markets out there that they would just simply realign capacity and traffic flows. It is the reality. They are the de facto national airline of Uganda. They transport more than the actual national airline does.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating to see how this extrapolates into the other East African countries and how many that they're picking up from Kigali and from Dar. And have you done that, Behramjee? Have you looked at that?
No, we've not done a deep dive on those. The next deep dive for next month will be New York.
Yes, of course. Well, we'll obviously see, and I think we've got a couple of issues with Sean's connection, but I'm sure he'll be back in a second. Oh, here he is. Perfect. So we're going to stay in the region. We've done quite a bit on Ethiopian already, and we're going to work our way around the national carriers. So the next one we're going to go to is to Kigali and to Rwandair, who announced a $93 million loss. However, they do have a new route. We talked about this, that of course to the west, there's been a lot of the airspace is closed over DRC. So they're having to deploy and look at markets in the east. And we agreed that it could work within reason to start flying. So they're going to do a 3-weekly triangular route, Kigali, Mombasa, Zanzibar. So yeah, I think a bit of context onto the Rwandair performance and how much of this is impacted by the airspace and the ongoing war, civil war, whatever we want to call it, in the west of the country. But yeah, Sean, I can see you smiling and waiting to go, so you can kick us off on this one.
Look, all I have to say is $93 million loss in a year for Rwanda is probably an improvement from some of their previous performance. It still is an improvement because they were doing 200 million euros a year in losses until a few years ago. $180 million, 180 million here, 180 million there. Sure, soon enough it adds up to real money, but for now it's an improvement in their performance, especially given the challenging operating environment that they've been in over the last year. So while I'm not going to... My views on Rwanda are well documented. I don't need to repeat them again. There's a reason I'm here at home and not attending another event in Kigali this week is because of my views, which are well documented on Rwanda. But it is a reality. They've been in a tough operational situation and they're continuing to operate. So kudos to them on that. I hope their previous focus, which Fuad has brought them in terms of not being a never-ending pit for subsidy, is going to return once they've got a bit more stability, which Donald Trump claims that, hey, I brokered peace between the DRC and Rwanda. So if that is the case, things are looking up.
Very good. You wondered when the Donald Trump was going to come out, and they got some 737-800s as well coming in online as well. So yeah, your thoughts on Rwandair, Behramjee?
John, I believe the 737s are replacements because I know one of the 700s has left the fleet and that is due to come to Malawi Airlines.
And an 800 has gone in.
Yeah, so they're juggling fleet in that respect. They are supposed to be taking an A330 from Qatar, though, from what I understand, because some of these airspace issues and things are putting a bit more of stress on flying time for their A330 fleet, so they're adding an additional ex-Qatar A330. But yeah, Behramjee, I want to hear what you think about Rwanda. My views are documented. Let's hear yours.
Yeah, talk about Rwanda and then talk to us about this new route as well, Behramjee, if that's all right.
So this new route is basically a buff to let's just say it's like a plan B for Rwanda. It's not their first choice. If Libreville and Brazzaville were still online along with Kinshasa, they would not need to fly to Zanzibar and Mombasa because they have a lot of demand from Europe to Libreville, Kinshasa and Brazzaville as it is. But Zanzibar does offer volume from Europe, so it can compensate for the loss of those Central African routes. But again, that demand is a bit seasonal and much more lower yielding as well. At the end of the day, they need the aircraft to be flying instead of being grounded and not doing anything. So this is a good backup plan that they have, that to open Zanzibar, as it will help get some volume traffic from London, Brussels and Paris in particular in the winter season.
Yeah, I shared with you guys, because I'm on the mailing list here in the UK, that they started marketing London to Zanzibar with Rwandair, good fares, etc. So I've started to see that they're trying to do that. But as you say, it's needs must while other markets are closed.
Yes, and also
it's low risk. It's low risk. It's a triangle flight with Mombasa, which is an existing destination. You're literally adding 40 minutes flying time. You can't go wrong with this.
Isn't it operating with the Q400?
It's scheduled with the Q4, but I expect to see it probably with the 7.3,
eventually.
I wouldn't even say eventually. I'd say on an ongoing basis. This is not even a crew layover thing. It's a turnaround flight. Good load today and big plane. So I expect to see that.
Because there'll be baggage problems for sure with the Q400.
Will it? For leisure route, I don't think so as much. Your bucket and spade European travelers are used to traveling with 20 kilos, and they'll come with their one bag of 20 kilos. Bikinis don't take up that much space.
Yeah, 15 kilos quite often. It's like you pay however many euros for a 15 kilo bag and you pay extra for a 20, and every now and again you might get a 23, but that's the Europeans, like you say, what we're used to.
Even if you have a full Q400, you can't carry all the bags if it's one suitcase baggage.
Nah, I know. You know that very well, Behramjee. You are the master of trying to schedule Q400s.
Yeah.
And all other manner of aircraft, let's be honest. But yeah.
CRJ,
all right, great. Okay, so
the CRJ are still there now in the winter season for Rwandair.
The CRJs are there, yeah. They still have the CRJs over there, but they're phasing them and trying to go to 7.3s as the narrow body. The Q4 has to stay as long as they intend to keep flying domestic, because I think Kambembe is the other airport there, and you can only take Q4s. In fact, they wrote a Q4 off there, I believe, already once. They've really got to keep that there, but it's strategically important for them to have Q4 just for those domestic routes.
Didn't Embraer do some sort of test at some airport in Rwanda? What was that?
AKURE, I think.
Okay.
Akuyeri is in Iceland.
Yeah, I don't think.
There's a national park near this.
Akagera. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where they
I don't know. I just remember them saying that they were doing something.
Repopulated
Rwanda, I cannot comment about. One day maybe I'll transit Kigali Airport again, but that's about all I can say.
Yeah. Let's move on to another country that is in the sights as well, in the crosshairs. So Tanzania, let's talk about Tanzania. And we're not going to talk about their national airline directly now. They do have a new route. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But what I wanted to bring up here is the announcement of the new passenger fee that they're going to be levying. So for those who haven't followed this, you can find it on the news. From the 1st of November, Tanzania is going to introduce what is the equivalent of a $45 one-way or $90 return facilitation fee on all international flights. Intra-African or intercontinental, you are going to be paying this. So officially, this is to fund electronic border control and advanced passenger information systems. The airlines will collect the fee, so it will ultimately be baked into your fare, baked into your ticket price. You were quoted in the press about this, Sean. So give us your take and what you said for those who couldn't get past the paywall on the article that you contributed to.
Not just have I been quoted in the press, but I've been quoted in the press, which then picked up by the wire services and translated into a number of languages. So I've been quoted by the press in Polish, in German, in Flemish, in a wide range of languages, criticizing the Tanzanian government. And maybe not even criticizing. My comment was just basically that if they are trying to say, because they have said that implementing an advanced passenger information system and security pre-screening of passenger systems comes at a cost, and this is essential for that, my comment is there is no way in hell that $90 a passenger is what you need to actually fund these systems. I know how much these systems cost. And unless your return of investment is the first year, you are basically using this as a screen for words, generating additional revenue. And let's not also look at the fact that it is just this $90 tax. Let's look at the fact that Tanzania has been stealthily increasing costs of traveling to Tanzania over the last while. They have, certainly the visas have been there since time immemorial, so I'm not going to grumble about those. They have added the Zanzibar insurance, which is $44, I believe. All visitors to Zanzibar have to pay $44 to enter Zanzibar, whether you're coming by air or by sea or whatever. In addition to that, now they are going to be instituting a mainland insurance starting in January, which is going to be another $44 separate from the Zanzibar insurance. So if you are, for example, going to be flying into Dar es Salaam and then catching the ferry to Zanzibar and then coming back via Dar es Salaam on the way back, you're going to have to buy a mainland insurance for Dar es Salaam, just for your 12-hour or 14-hour or one-day transit, then pay another $44 when you arrive in Zanzibar for another insurance over there. And then on your way back, you're going to have to buy yet another insurance for Dar es Salaam on the way, which is going to be $130 additional on top of the $90 additional in airport taxes which are out there. So while Zanzibar and Tanzania in general have seen an increase in tourism numbers over since COVID, their numbers have just been steadily growing up. There is going to be a point where this demand is going to start drying up with these additional charges in there. And some of these charges are stealth charges, but word gets around. But the bottom line is going to be affected immediately with this VI tax, this $90 tax for a package tour to Zanzibar is going to cost $90 more in 2026 than it did in 2025. That's just the bottom line.
Without accounting for inflation or anything, without accounting for anything extra.
In terms of baseline cost of this is how much the air ticket is going to cost more. A tour operator is going to have to pay $90 more to their air provider for the air aspect of the thing. And I find it actually interesting that they're talking about all of this in dollars, despite the fact that Tanzania has also been very vocal about de-dollarizing their economy and trying to quote everything in Tanzanian shillings. And yet again, they come up over here and talk about how their costs are increasing in dollar terms. So yeah, this is Tanzanian politics at play. I do not believe that any of this is intended for the actual purpose that it is stated for. It is a general revenue grab, and there's nothing wrong with that. Countries have an absolute right to do that, but I think at the end of the day, Tanzania is also going to find out that there is a limit to how much you can push a passenger, especially a price-sensitive tourist passenger from key markets, because you are in competition with other destinations like Madagascar, like Seychelles, like Kenya, and so forth, who have not added that extra $200 of charges, which Zanzibar is a great place to visit. We had a great time there during AviaDev. There's culture, there's beaches, there's food. There's a lot of different things, but is that worth $220 more than, say, a Mombasa or Seychelles? I don't know. They've got their own attractions as well. So I think this will backfire on the Tanzanian government. And I think at the end of the day, this insurance scheme is probably going to wind up being a consolidated insurance scheme for both the mainland and Zanzibar. How they work that out, they'll have to figure out from their politics. But I think that is probably where we'll wind up at. A $45 give or take, or maybe even slightly, maybe a $50, $60 insurance fee. This $90 tax is stuck. We're stuck with that. It's not going to go away. But I can guarantee you it is not 100% funding the cost of implementing the technical solution. It does not cost that much.
Yeah, but the visa as well, you get the visa, it's for Tanzania, right? It's not a Zanzibar specific visa.
Yeah,
you can
correct. The visa is $50 or $30 for transit visa, $150 for Americans. In fact, that's even going to go up for Americans. But the visa covers the entire republic, the United Republic of Tanzania. But your insurance now has to be separate insurances for each time you enter a different province. And that's ridiculous. There's no way. The justification, in fact, I saw this as a justification, and I thought this was ridiculous because I cannot believe that they even believe some of the nonsense they're spewing. They claim that since they brought in the additional charges for this mandatory insurance, they've seen an increase in tourist numbers. And that just shows that tourists are choosing Zanzibar because of the assurance and peace of mind that they have if they get sick that they will have medical care. If you really believe that, I've got a bridge somewhere to sell. So I've got an APS system that actually costs $90 per passenger to run.
So I want to bring you into this, Behramjee, because I think the first point to make on that is, number one, the fee versus what it's actually they're saying it's going to be used for. Then the second question is, will it disappear once this has been paid for? Probably not. It's one of those things, it stays. It's never going to go away. But no laughing, but this is exactly how it should be done. If you want transparency, this money is for, this is what you're going to get for it. And actually, the average tourist doesn't care. But the way where I wanted to bring you in on this, Behramjee, is we did in the previous podcast, we were talking about Flightlink starting Nairobi, Jomo Kenyatta to Zanzibar. Yes, they've got international transit, but they're going to have to levy this tax, this $90 on those flights. And as someone who works with a regional airline, the impact of suddenly throwing $90 on a hopper flight. Okay, if you're flying from Europe and you've got a big 2-week holiday, you can suck up the $90. We've talked about this with Namibia and what they did with the visas. Yeah. But when it comes to those intra-regional flights, that's going to have a huge impact on the cost of those flights as a percentage. And it would really make you think twice about how viable they'll be.
Yes, for example, Mombasa Zanzibar was launched last year. It's a very
with Jumbo Jet.
Yeah, it was a very short flight. And for traders who fly that route up and down, an extra $100 approximately in taxes will put them off. because they're earning in
It
local
doubles the
currency.
cost.
Yeah, and they also earn in local currency. They don't earn in US dollars. So definitely.
So what does the airline do? What does the airline do? Does it wait to see the demand drop, or does it suck up the? It can't suck up the cost because they've got to pay this per passenger.
No, it's to be honest, the national carrier Air Tanzania has to take the initiative and has to lobby the government to reduce the tax amount. If that will happen,
The national carrier takes initiative on nothing other than higher subsidies.
yes, but or if the national carrier does not do that, the big carriers that operate into Tanzania, like Ethiopian, Kenyan, Emirates, they'll have to build a case to and give a sample of the 3 months of passenger traffic to show that passenger traffic has dropped ever since this tax has come up. But the likelihood of the Tanzanians listening to them is very minimal.
But the point is that you're always behind there.
They're making arguments that passenger numbers are going up despite charges, so passengers like charges. When you're taking that kind of asinine argument to begin with, do you really think that presenting them with numbers is going to make a difference? There is a conclusion already reached. We need more revenue from tourism, from transportation, and whatever else. And they're just looking for reasons to justify it. And that's fine. Raise your revenues to tourism through transportation, face the criticism and so forth. But please don't pee on us and tell us it's raining.
Very nice. And staying with you, Behramjee, just to talk about the Air Tanzania also are now going to launch Lagos from the 13th of September. I've seen some really attractive fares on social media for these initial launches. Now, of course, at this stage, that initial flight isn't going to be subject to the $90 until November, but then it will obviously change. Have you got some ideas on this as a route in terms of the numbers, the demand, and whether you think it works? I think it's going to be 3 times a week with a 737 MAX, right?
Let me say, I think, but I'm just pulling up the numbers. If you look in terms of the schedule, this is largely designed to connect with the Johannesburg flights. And that's just the reality of it. They're looking at putting transit traffic through. Nigerians don't find it easy to get into Tanzania. Tanzania is actually pretty strict on giving visas to Nigerians, so it's not going to be for the O&D traffic. It's about the transit traffic, and the transit traffic is going to be Johannesburg. Schedule doesn't work as well for Mumbai, but potentially Mumbai One Direction as well could work in that respect. But it is a Dar es Salaam. It's just the transit hub for passengers going from Lagos to Johannesburg.
Okay.
Yeah, so regarding the traffic, point-to-point traffic is very small. It's 6,500 passengers a year on Lagos to Dar es Salaam. But due to the fact that Tanzania gives a visa on arrival to Nigerians, this should be heavily stimulated.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't?
Tanzania does not give visa on arrival to Nigerians.
And we had problems with that this year at AviaDev.
We had significant problems with that.
Really?
Yeah,
But
you have to get a referral visa.
But didn't they announce for all Africans that they are giving?
Behramjee, you've been in Africa long enough that when people say all Africans, this is terms and conditions applied, exclude Somalia, Nigeria, Libya, and a few others. Don't pay attention to that. Look at the fine print.
Okay. My mistake on that. But I assume it's relatively easier compared to other African countries in getting an e-visa, at least for Nigerians.
No, it is not. It is absolutely
Even
not. I promise you. I know many Nigerians. We know Nigerians personally. We know Nigerians who were supposed to come to big-name Nigerians who were supposed to be attending AviaDev who could not attend because C-level executives with Nigerian Airlines were being denied visas. So no, it is not easy for Nigerians to get visas from Tanzania. And let's look at it the other way. It's not easy for Tanzanians to get visas for Nigeria either. Nigeria is charging nearly $400 to a Tanzanian to get a single-entry business visitor visa. So visa is what's holding this route back. It's not what's going to facilitate it.
Yeah, then this route, it's going to be started with a 737 MAX 9. Point to point is very low. They'll obviously be dumping fares to Johannesburg and other connecting markets to get some decent revenue and load factor. But even with the 737 MAX 9, I do not see them getting even 40% load factor if they do not sort out their visa.
No, I don't see this route being a success. There's no logic behind it, but have plane must fly. It's much better to even fly this damn thing than leave the world's most expensive paperweight sitting on ground.
Yeah, and it doesn't connect to Guangzhou also. Guangzhou.
know what their bloody Guangzhou schedule is. Their one-way Guangzhou flights.
Yeah. So
Look, don't get me started on it. Rwanda and Air Tanzania back to back. My blood pressure at the end of this recording is just going to be through the roof.
All right, let's move on. But again, I think really interesting topic to touch on, because people always talk about, oh, we need visa facilitation. And as much as there's work being done to make e-visas, etc., there's also, I talked about Namibia, there's loads of other countries that are changing things. And I don't think people mind paying so long as it's easy and it's fair and it's equitable and all the rest of it. But this particular route, if it's incredibly expensive and difficult to get a visa for the destinations at either end of the route, that isn't a recipe for success for any route. I don't care where you're flying from. So then you're relying, like you say, Sean, on transit and picking up and getting traffic from other carriers and doing that, stimulating that through cost. Okay, we're still in East Africa and we are now going to Uganda. Uganda Airlines have announced $76 million of losses for 2024-2025. There is talk about them starting domestic flights. These losses are now being investigated and there's lots of conjecture around how has this happened, etc. Yeah, who wants to go first on this one?
Sean can do it.
I'll jump into it. Yeah. So $76 million of losses. Congratulations to them. They view this as somewhat of a success because they've reduced it from previous years of even higher losses. They are currently, I just did some quick numbers based on their actual figures. These are unaudited. I should stress this point. Jennifer has stressed that these are unaudited. So the final figures, once the audited accounts are in, may change. But are not going to change significantly and definitely not going to change for the better. But effectively, it costs them $385 to fly each passenger that they transport, and they earn only $234 in revenue for that. So effectively, the Ugandan taxpayer is subsidizing $151 for each passenger that gets on a Uganda Airlines plane. The more they grow, the more the taxpayer has to subsidize them. More on domestic flights, probably even a larger subsidy, because other than two other airports in the country, so you've got Entebbe and then you've got Soroti and Gulu, which are the only other two runways which could potentially even accept a CRJ over there. And if they're going to start flying to other places like the tourist destinations, to other places like Kasese and so forth, they're going to probably have to go into kind of fleet like Cessna Caravans or something similar to that, which is just going to add more cost, complexity, because you know what? That's just what Uganda Airline needs: more cost, more complexity, more fleet types, and a complete lack of vision and strategy. And this is completely being imposed on them. There is not like there is a business case for this, that there are thousands of people banging on the door saying, give us more domestic flights. Nonsense. This is just a shareholder, which is the government, imposing a vision on them and then imposing pipe dreams of success on them and trying to hold them accountable for decisions that they didn't make in the first place. I pity Jennifer, I pity Adi, I pity all the people over there. They are being forced into failure by other people's decisions and then being held accountable as a result. And I couldn't tolerate it. More power to them for the longer that they stick at it without going crazy.
Yeah, and the tricky part here, Behramjee, is, of course, they've talked about the fleet as well, about saying we're already going to phase out the CRJs because we can't get the parts. They're now doing some of the maintenance. I saw they did an engine change down in Uganda and things like that. But that is such a huge issue, because I remember it's 5-6 years ago, whenever it was. No, what is it? 7 years since they got the CRJ? 7 years, isn't it? Since the airline started.
You showcased it for them, remember?
We did, yeah. And maybe people have seen the pictures, but yeah, we did our welcome reception. Guest of honor was a brand new CRJ with the Bombardier team there, and in the livery and everything else, and all the pomp and circumstance. And it ended up being the last new CRJ 900. But this is such a huge issue, right? Where the fleet side of things, and of course, like Sean says, the current operational team, the commercial team, is operating with the fleet it's inherited. So that's particularly difficult. I'd love your thoughts on this as well, Behramjee.
Something interesting which needs to be mentioned. They started London this year, so the losses for the next year will be much higher because it's a long haul route. It doesn't connect to many destinations in both directions. So the operating costs will be very high. So I will not be surprised if next year the loss increases to be either close to $100 million or slightly above $100 million. That's another 25% more than what is currently being experienced.
And let me just say this, with regards to London, I've had a chance to talk to a couple of people in Uganda Airlines over the last few weeks, and certainly they will take huge losses in the first year at London. It's an expensive destination and an expensive route to operate. But I've seen this with multiple airlines at Gatwick. Kenya Airways has been successful with their Gatwick launch. I've seen that from my client, Air Sierra Leone. The numbers have been fairly solid. This summer from the UK to Africa has actually been pretty good. So if you were going to pick a summer to start in, this is probably the best summer in recent memory to do that. They're definitely satisfied, if not exceeded their expectations in terms of how their Entebbe London route has done so far. And that is like by people within the airline themselves. Multiple people who I've asked have said that from numbers, it's doing fine. From cost, yeah, we knew it was going to be an issue. Let's see how it goes.
We'll see whether that tallies with what the politicians thought and hoped, but it normally doesn't. But yeah, we'll see. Yes, Behramjee, you want to say last word on this one?
Also, I believe in the press, they are looking to procure more new A320 new aircraft. So obviously, if they're going to do that, the losses will increase further because the procurement fixed costs of those aircraft will be there in their accounts. So at the end of the day, the losses are not going to reduce.
No. Which government airline does not want to procure a larger fleet? Airbus, Boeing, and all of the above put together. You've worked enough for government airlines. You listen to them all the time. In fact, if you really want to watch a good soap opera, go and watch Jennifer being quizzed by the parliamentary committee. There's some really good video there of really silly questions being given really obtuse answers, and it's truly which side is going to crack now in terms of who can ask a sillier question and whether she can give a more polite yet rude answer at the same time. I think it was a masterstroke, and I've got a lot of respect for Jennifer for genuinely not jumping across the table and throttling someone. So power to her.
Only Sean would be watching the parliamentary questioning. I love this. This is his evening watching.
I'm going to say something. The reason for this is one of our regular listeners, Sabina. He sent me a link on YouTube of that for me to watch and see it. So here's a shout out to you. I know you've been waiting for this episode. Shout out to you, brother.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and thanks to all the listeners for tolerating us for all these months. I mean, I know we've got a loyal bunch there, so thank you all. Right, we're still in East Africa, and we can't leave East Africa without talking about Kenya and Kenya Airways, because they have also been talking finances, and they posted their losses of $94 million. That is just for the first half of 2025, after posting a profit in 2024. And I think they've talked about it really, when you look at their project, it's at the stage that they should and are aiming to have a strategic investor to allow them to invest and grow and develop the fleet, etc. And that is probably the absolute laser focus at the moment. And I think they're blaming a bit of this on those elements. But yeah, talk to us about that, what the numbers tell us about their trajectory and the need for a partner. Go on, Sean.
Let Sean start.
When you have a 94 million half-year loss coming after a profit, there is only one trajectory, and that trajectory is down, down. Nosedive, engine failure. In fact, engine failure has been a big reason for this whole negative trajectory anyway, but it has been everything that could go wrong for Kenya Airways has gone wrong this half year. Even the positive has turned into a negative. There's nothing much I can say. When I spoke to our people at Kenya Airways, our friends over there, and just generally, I think there's just a numbness more than anything else. I don't think you can say much. They've made every effort. They just have not been able to reap what they have sown. It's a crop. From an agricultural analogy, they have planted a crop, but the crop has failed. And sometimes that's due to the rain, sometimes due to the wrong fertilizer, but whatever it was, the crop has failed, and Kenya Airways is facing yet another existential crisis 6 months after they thought that they were out of the worst of it.
Yeah, and I've read some news which I'm sure they won't like, and was definitely the previous CEO was very against it, which is really becoming more and more liberal and less protective of the national airline and opening the skies. And there is a lot. We always laud Kenya for this, and we're going to talk about a couple of route expansions, new routes that are coming into the market. That is challenging, but I take your point. How do you see the Kenya Airways situation, Behramjee?
I see it in a very sad way, because all the good work that was done in 2024 has been evaporated by the 787 groundings, as well as a couple of other aircraft too, and largely the 787s. Also, I assume that the daily New York flight, in terms of net loss, has contributed a lot to this 94 million half-yearly loss. They used to fly it in high season 10 times a week, but now it's a daily operation. Their 787 fleet is right now struggling a lot. They also had a couple of long-term wet lease deals over the past year with the A330-300, so that also would add to the losses. Let's see. It's an airline that has come out from the COVID experience quite well compared to other carriers on the continent, even worldwide, considering what they've been through before to have achieved a net profit result last year. So hopefully things can improve. It doesn't look too good for the time being. They need to first get their 787 fleet flying fully. So until that happens, it doesn't look too promising. And it's not only their fault, it's a supply chain issue of their engine manufacturer.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough times for sure. Okay, we'll park Kenya Airways there, but we'll stay in Kenya because we've got a couple of flights to talk about. So the first one is Qatar Airways is going to go to triple daily to Nairobi from the 15th of September. So interesting for that one. And the second one is FlyNAS is launching Riyadh Nairobi from the 2nd of October, 3 times a week. So you got a lot of this Gulf to Africa play. And I think what's interesting here is what's the knock-on effect in terms of that power dynamic from the Gulf into Kenya? What does it mean for Etihad, for example, and the broader Gulf to Africa connectivity picture? I think that's the question we've got here based on what we're reading.
John, it's not even 3 times daily flights, but it's 3 times 777s and A350s. That is 1,000 seats a day in each direction that Qatar alone is putting into these markets. It is basically turning Kenya Airways over its lap and spanking them, whether they like it or not. And it is certainly Kenya Airways and Qatar Airways are now strategic partners.
I was going to say they might be liking it if they're going to be friends. So this might be consensual.
Some people like spanking, but I genuinely hope that whatever is going on over here is part of this strategic vision, this joint strategic vision, because if not, this kind of capacity surge, unilateral capacity surge can be the death knell for someone like KQ, because with 3 times a day, QR can really lap up every bit of North American, European, Middle Eastern, Far Eastern. Every single route connects in both directions with more seats a day than KQ has, pretty much almost as much as they have in their entire network. And that is a humongous amount of capacity for what is a low O&D market. It's not like a Dubai market, Dubai to Nairobi, where Emirates is coming in with similar volumes of capacity. There's a huge amount of that is going in for O&D. Doha is not O&D. It's all connections. This is all going to other routes where KQ could otherwise be serving. So, yeah, it's honestly, it is as much of an if it is not being done with a joint strategic vision, and I don't see that strategic vision myself, but if it's not being done with that, this is as much or even more of an existential threat to Kenya Airways than their $94 million loss. Money can be backstopped. Market share really is what passengers choose to fly, and once you've lost it, earning it back's not that easy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Behramjee, you come in on the Qatar side, but also the FlyNAS, because I'm assuming that's a very different route, which will be probably outbound labor, right, into Saudi, based on what you said before.
Yes, just one thing though, I'd like to talk about Qatar. Flying 3 times a day wide body into Nairobi. Currently, 13%, that's 13% of their Nairobi traffic is point to point as per data available. while 87% is
Nothing.
transit. Yeah. Now, regarding the top 20 O&Ds, out of their Nairobi flights, 10 of them are Europe bound. And their biggest transit market, now this, John, you will never guess. It's impossible for you to guess this because even I would have never guessed it.
Get Sean to guess it. He'll guess it. Go on.
How about the numbers here? So I can just open up my spreadsheet and guess it in a second. So I'll cheat.
Go on. What's the question?
Madrid. Madrid is.
You know what? I'm not that surprised. I'm genuinely not that surprised by it because it's something that Martin had said to us. Remember when they signed the agreement to the code share with Air Europa? And I was like, what actually is going from Kenya to Madrid? And he'd actually said, you'd be surprised. And so, yeah, I'm surprised, but I'm not shocked.
Yeah, Madrid to Nairobi, I think 24-23 had about 39,000 passengers point to point. Even I was surprised when I saw that. So there is some, I don't know what type of traffic it is, but there seems to be a fairly decent market size already built up for that. But apart from that, Qatar Airways flying triple daily wide bodies into Nairobi, they won't be full, that's for sure. There's a bit too much capacity for that. Also remember, Qatar Airways with this triple daily surge, I would say also is attacking Gulf Air and Etihad on the front foot.
Absolutely.
So they are basically also doing this to make sure that their nearest rivals also feel the pinch. And I will not be surprised within less than a year that Gulf Air again withdraws from Nairobi and Etihad goes back to operating a daily flight instead of double daily.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, Etihad for sure cannot sustain a double daily flight into Nairobi, even with their network.
I don't think Gulf Air could sustain any flight into Nairobi. You've learned that yourself the hard way. But no, I think you're absolutely right. This is Qatar like a dog marking its territory, saying that Kenya, we are the strategic partnership. This is our market. Everybody else piss off. And that is effectively what they are doing. They are making a statement. They are making a loud statement, and they're saying, you want to take us on? Come on. We've got the big guns in this market. Bring it. And I don't see anybody challenging them, let alone anybody with the capacity to beat them.
Yes.
What about Ethiopian? Because you always said like they want more frequencies, but they've obviously been prevented.
It's a totally different dynamic.
Because it is a very different. Ethiopian from Nairobi is go on, man.
Sorry. Ethiopian is basically targeting Nairobi to the world with a very minor backtracking. Qatar Airways cannot carry Nairobi to Africa. So that's one big advantage that Ethiopia has. So that's one thing. Second thing is also
exactly it.
Then flying from Nairobi via Addis to North America and Europe is far more faster via Addis versus Doha. The Ethiopian will play on that as well.
But they are actually competitive to fly to Doha. Just because of elapsed time difference between the two is not going to be that significant. But as you say, Nairobi to Africa via Addis is a logical connection to pretty much every single market. Yeah. In fact, to pretty much every market that Kenya Airways does not themselves serve, non-stop from Nairobi, Addis is the next logical connection for pretty much every one of those. Doha is not a logical connection for anything in Africa. The end.
All right. Very good. While we're on Qatar, we're going to move away from East Africa, but they've also done quite a bit in terms of upscaling Lagos, Johannesburg, Cape Town, putting larger capacity aircraft onto certain routes. Talk us through this, Sean. What have they done?
Wait.
We discussed last month that they'd actually trimmed some capacity. Yeah.
Behramjee's still going.
John, you had a question regarding FlyNAS. We were about to start that topic.
We never really talked about FlyNAS. Right, do FlyNAS, yeah.
So FlyNAS is targeting for point-to-point traffic for Riyadh, as well as some spillover transit traffic via Riyadh to Jeddah and Dammam. The main reason for this is that Nairobi has seen a surge on traffic, especially in the labor market segment from Riyadh and Jeddah over the last year. Riyadh to Nairobi now is 85,000 passengers, which represented 10% increase year over year, whereas Jeddah Nairobi increased by 46% year over year from 61,000 in 2023 to 89,000 in 2024. So the big disadvantage though for Flyer Deal is that they are about 99% dependent on the Saudi market on this route. So that is their main disadvantage. But the volume is there. Saudi flies to Jeddah, flies to Nairobi using a 330-300. So they're capturing majority of the Jeddah market. But for Riyadh, until Riyadh Air starts its own flights, which God knows will be when, to Nairobi, Flyer Deal can get some decent load. I don't see the route doing that because it's mainly point-to-point focus, but the load factor should be relatively stable for the time being.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Agreed? Sure.
The 3-weekly narrow-body operation is not high risk. It's a market which already has a high ceiling. They will get their share of that market simply by being the non-stop operator in it. I can't see it going wrong. It's a logical move for someone like Flynas, who has to increase their presence in many markets to defend against when Riyadh Air comes in. It's what it is.
Yeah, that will be fascinating, all the dynamics from Saudi for sure. So let's cover Qatar and what they're doing elsewhere on the continent. So increasing Lagos, increasing Joburg, increasing Cape Town, upgauging aircraft. Go through it. Sean, tell us what they're doing.
Well, yeah, I think you've mentioned that. We discussed last month how they were trimming some of their capacity seasonally in some markets to surge in others. They brought back some of that capacity. So, for example, Lagos, which had been trimmed down from the double daily, is going back up to the double daily over the peak periods, over 6-week periods. They're back up to double daily. Johannesburg, as we said, was going to increase. It's up to 18 weekly. Cape Town's at 12 weekly. Other routes like Casablanca, even though that's not sub-Saharan, is being upgauged as well. So in general, Qatar is doing what they've done pretty well over the last year or two, has been to seasonally surge capacity, not just necessarily with frequencies, but by aircraft types and so forth. And we've discussed it a couple of other places when they're Durban, Maputo, when they changed aircraft types and modified frequencies and things. Qatar is matching demand to market, not always perfectly. The one good thing about them is they're willing to admit when they got it wrong and reinstate something. So when they cut Lagos, they may have cut too much, they put it back. And good for them on that. And we can't not mention another elephant that's been in the room recently, which is Qatar. The rumors of Qatar Airways potentially becoming the new owners of Air Mauritius. And similarly,
minority
I think it's something.
Yeah, they can't own more than 49,
whatever.
right?
Yeah. They could own whatever they want. It's the government of Mauritius is going to decide whether they want to do it. And since the government owns the asset and wants the money, the government can choose. But I honestly, while it would make sense, and I think Air Mauritius probably needs a sensible partner to clap them on the head and say, what the hell are you guys doing? Stop stealing, stop being a vanity project. But I don't think Qatar is going to be that partner for various political reasons. Mauritius has, for all that chat about, we are open to Africa, we are open to the world, they're really not. They're probably the most protectionist tourist market, which is so heavily dependent. They want their airlines and their airlines as partners to be the only providers of feed over there. And I cannot see them choosing Qatar, even though I think they probably would do well to choose Qatar.
And Qatar's being courted by everyone. Obviously, the Rwandair thing, and then you've got them talking to Kenya and SAA, and all the national carriers are going to Airlink. Yeah, of course, Airlink. Yeah, that's happened now. So, yeah, it's an amazing story, and we've covered it in great detail. And it is actually reaping the rewards of being really bold about Africa during COVID, right? We talked about that, and they've been able to build on that. So I think it's really good. We just mentioned SAA, so let's talk about SAA because it was in the news today that SAA are going to launch double daily flights to AviaDev host for 2026, Gaborone in Botswana, from November using an A320. So quite a large aircraft for a small flight. And I think this is the timings as well. They've already published everything, and it looks good for out and back in the day to go and do some business in the city. So do we see this working, first of all? Are the numbers strong? There's a bit of competition on this market from the national carrier and Airlink as well.
I think the interesting thing which you're looking at is, as you say, when you look at the schedule, that actually gives away what markets they're targeting, because that flight departs from Johannesburg at 6 o'clock in the morning, gets into Gaborone, and then comes back by about 9 a.m. So the reality is they're not targeting Johannesburg origin traffic, they're targeting Gaborone origin traffic on the same day returns. And because of that early arrival back into Johannesburg, they're going to be connecting to Accra, they're going to be connecting to Lagos, they're going to be connecting to Harare, they're potentially connecting to the Brazil flight, I think, and as well as the feed within that network. The evening flight also then creates a feed the other way, which comes into the Star Alliance partners on the overnight flights and so forth. I don't think this is much. I think certainly there's going to be a Gaborone side OND, Gaborone, Johannesburg, Gaborone, OND, same day round trips and stuff as such. But I think more and more this is going to be a network feeder and a reverse network feeder. Because remember, SA has got a lot of utility flying now in that overnight bank. They've got, I think, Lubumbashi, they've got Dar es Salaam, they've got stuff like that, all of which now are night flights. That 7:30 p.m. return from Gaborone now feeds into those departures, and the return, which comes back at 4 and 5 in the morning, is perfectly feeding into that 6 a.m. departure to Gaborone. So certainly we know Botswana is an underserved market from an aviation perspective. It's a small population, but it's trying to push itself as a more viable tourist destination. This is the reason why they are hosting AviaDev, for example. But I think it's multiple markets. That market is going to be Gaborone OND, and that Gaborone OND, not just to Johannesburg, but certainly Johannesburg. I think that'll be a bulk of it. But in addition to that, it's going to be Gaborone onward to the rest of the wider SAA and Star Alliance network. In addition to that, some more SAA news, and this is a bit of an interesting one, is that SAA is going to be bringing in a wet-leased A330 from Highfly this winter. And we discussed before how their plans had been to bring in 2 A330s on dry lease, that they had intended to launch Mumbai, they were intending to increase frequencies here and there. Obviously, that deal has fallen apart with their need to have to restate the results, as we discussed in the last podcast. But to cover for some of that, they're going to be bringing in A330 on wet lease. My understanding is that this aircraft is primarily going to be to cover maintenance on the rest of their wide-body fleet, because some of those are due for heavy checks this winter. So that'll at least backstop it. But the side effect of it is that they're going to be increasing frequencies to Brazil over Christmas. So they're going to make Johannesburg 4 weekly over Christmas and keep the 2 Cape Towns as well. There's going to be 6 weekly flights, SA to Brazil over the Christmas peak period for SAA, and an additional A330 wide body in there, which will cover their Accra, Lagos, Brazil routes. Of course, only the 340 can still fly because of ETOPS.
Right, got you. Any thoughts on SAA, Behramjee?
On this route, to begin with, there's huge demand. It's 146,000 passengers just point to point. And with their timing, double daily morning flight and evening flight, definitely targeting trader traffic and daytime, how do you call it? Passengers just go back and forth for one day. What's the term called, Sean, again?
Like a commuter almost, isn't it? Same day return.
Same day return traffic, yeah.
Okay, yeah, same day return traffic. I thought there was another phrase attached to that. Anyways, so as Sean correctly said, there will be directional connections. So the morning flight from Gaborone to Joburg will connect nicely to West Africa as well as domestic South Africa. And the evening flight from Joburg will connect domestic South Africa, feeding that. So I definitely expect the route to be popular. It's a very short flight, very low risk. The yield is very high due to it being a short flight. So yeah, it's a good utilization of their asset also on this short flight. And
let's keep in mind, this winter, South African Airways is going to have 18 narrow-body aircraft to deploy across their network. They're going to have 14 of their own A320s, as well as 4 wet-lease Sun Express 737-800s again. That is a lot of capacity, which they cannot deploy the entire winter season on domestic routes. Certainly during the peak, November, December, January, yeah, you could fly them to Durban and Cape Town and pretty much print money, but they've got the rest of the season to think about. So having to develop routes like this Gaborone one, I think it's an important thing. That's a lot of capacity, and 18 aircraft, 18 narrow bodies is not a joke. In addition to now 5 wide bodies, so the 4 of their own wide bodies, at least one. It's an interesting I've said this over and over. My gripe with South African Airways is I don't think that they should have existed in the first place as a restarted airline, given the way the business rescue went. But what they have done since they've come out of business rescue from a network and route planning standpoint, I will hold up as a case study of the right way to do things. They may not have hit on every single one of their choices. For example, in Malawi, it was a bit of a failure. They pulled out of it in less than a year. But the reality is, in most of the markets, they have done the right decisions for the right reasons, and kudos to them. I talk to them regularly on this. I criticize them where I need to, like on their split Brazil operations, but it has done well enough for them that it's not gone away. More power to them. I've got a lot of respect for the way SAA has come, because they really have been fighting this battle with one hand tied behind their back.
Yeah, you've been very consistent in that message as well. So I think that's great. We've got a couple more to cover before we close this month's podcast. One that I've really been excited to get to, and it got pushed down the agenda simply because we had all these financial results coming in and all the rest of it, which is a brand new route. That's always exciting on the podcast, especially when it's something in a part of the world that we're very active in. So ProFlight Zambia has announced flights from Lusaka to Windhoek starting 3rd of March 2026. It will be 3 times a week on a Tuesday, Friday, and a Sunday. It was a route that I remember via Livingston. Yes. Yeah. And you can talk to us about the routing and how it all fits together. It's a route that I know was discussed, I'm sure before, but definitely during AviaDev 2024 when it was held in Windhoek. It's great to see it finally coming to life, but also a reminder that some of these routes take years to actually come to fruition. It has to all align. It has to make sense. And it's not a joke to launch a new route, and everybody has to align and make the business case work. Have you had a chance to look at the demand for this one, Behramjee, from Zambia as a whole? So you've got Lusaka, you've got Livingston to Windhoek. What's the numbers? What's the market? All right. While you do that, let Sean kick us off on the scheduling.
Honest answer, this route is going to be designed not for local demand, but is going to be for tourist demand, for externally generated demand, people who are on holiday in Windhoek and want to come and see Victoria Falls, or want to add a Zambian safari or whatever else to it. So I don't think the local market is it. I think the local market, we've seen this before, and it's something that I've spoken about before, is that the local traffic in Southern Africa, in the SADC region, is largely north-south traffic. It is traffic flows. The largest traffic flows are from, north to south, from whatever location into South Africa, and then wherever connecting in Johannesburg going up. Johannesburg is still a major hub for the SADC region. These east-west flights have been few and far between. So I think it is interesting from that perspective, and hopefully there is the ability to generate this east-west directional traffic flow, because historically that has never been successful when tried. There is near neighbor kind of thing. So, Malawi to Zambia works well. Malawi to Zimbabwe works well. Mozambique to Tanzania works well. But those are neighbors. There is a larger link in that kind of thing. But from something like Lusaka to Windhoek is actually a fairly long flight. We're talking, if they flew it nonstop, it would be 3.5 hours. This is a fair distance. They need to do a tech stop in Livingston simply because the CRJ wouldn't be able to do it nonstop at max payload. They're having to do this over there. I think Livingston's location is great. It's perfectly along the way, and it is a huge tourist destination in its own right. And I think that is where the bulk of the demand is actually going to be from. Not as much from Lusaka through to Windhoek. There will be some business traffic on that route, of course, but I think the Windhoek to Livingston is where this one is really going to pick up, because those are becoming 2 strong tourist centers for the region.
Yeah. John, is it on a
great point. Go on, Behramjee.
Is it on an Embraer E45?
No, CRJ.
CRJ 200. CRJ 200?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, so 100 and 200 are what they have. So presumably they'll use the 200 on this. Yeah, 50 seater.
So same size as E45. The point-to-point market is very small, John. It's only 3,800 passengers. So it has to be stimulated quite a bit. Would it be stimulated? Let's see. I assume, Sean, how's the visa process for these 2 countries to get visas?
Between the countries, no visas. In fact, not even no visas. I don't even think they need passports. You can go to your national ID.
Okay.
I mean, Zambians can go to Namibia, and Namibians can come to Zambia without a problem.
Okay.
The countries do border each other. It's not like there isn't. It's just that they border at the Okvango Strip kind of thing. So it's not like it's the core of Namibia. It's like the little tip of Namibia, the little tip of Zambia.
Yeah. It's
I actually last month when we went off on our safari and a holiday at Vic Falls, we actually we went from Zambia into Botswana and took a boat ride from Botswana into Namibian waters, and so literally that Kazungula area where all four countries come together, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Zambia, literally they all intersect at the same point effectively. There's 100-meter difference between, so Namibia doesn't actually border Zimbabwe. There's 100 meters of border between them, but for all practical purposes, you can take a boat from one to the other, so it's all the same.
So, yeah, just to say, as a Brit, because I'm going to Zambia in a couple of weeks, there is no cost. It's visa on arrival to Zambia. So if I'm already going to Namibia on holiday and I want to do Zambia as well, easy peasy. I don't need to worry about that, and there is no cost. So I'm sure that's been factored in. I don't know whether that's the case.
Brits now have a cost for Namibia visas.
We do have a cost for Namibia visas, but if I'm going there, I've got to pay that. So no comment on that. But I think it's a really interesting point. And what about the potential partnership for ProFlight? Is this something where they're going to need? And I do understand that a lot of people will go to Windhoek, say with Discover, for example, and then do their trip in Namibia and then separately fly across to Livingston or whatever it may be, or get a tour operator to put all this together. I suppose they don't necessarily need to have an interline or some sort of partnership there.
They will. I'll say, I had this conversation with Kira and Krista at AviaDev, and they made it very clear. In fact, I can't remember which one of them said it, but I'll quote it in this respect, that it is one of their strategic priorities that they want to interline with every airline that flies to the airports they do. They want to have an interline agreement in place and see where that builds. So their main focus, obviously, Lusaka. They interlined with every single airline that flies to Lusaka, with the exception of Uganda Airlines. And that was just because they hadn't had the time to complete that interline yet, but they were working on it. And their goal is to just build up their interlines, because as a small airline, look, this is a strategy that's near and dear to my heart, a strategy that I formulated independently of them in Ghana for what Africa World Airlines was doing. As a small airline, your key niche is your home market, and your last mile delivery is a service that only you can provide. If you want to be Discover and you want to feed people on joint holidays through a tour operator, whatever, into Windhoek and then do a week in Namibia and then add Victoria Falls or add Cape Town or whatever, you're not going to be flying your A330 on these 40-minute tag legs within Africa. You've got to have a local partner. We've seen Fly Namibia has been that partner in Namibia on this point, and there's absolutely no reason why ProFlight not come in as an option to that or as an alternative to that or as whatever else. So I think, again, a 3-weekly CRJ route is as low risk as you can get. The upside is huge. The downside is minimal. If they have the capacity to do this, which they are getting as they're adding more and more planes and so forth, why not do it? And they've got a professional management there. They run well and they run under the radar. And I'm glad we can shine a bit of a spotlight on them today.
Yeah, me too. Great. Okay, great news. And it looks quite positive. Right. So we've got 3 more things to get through. We're almost out of time. So the first one is Airlink. We haven't talked about them much this month, which is quite unusual. But they put out a statement saying they may suspend ticket sales in Mozambique, so they can't repatriate their money. But also they're in the news because they're going to increase their flights to Sean's, Malawi, from October.
Which they actually announced. They haven't actually announced it, which is strange. I sent a message to Lyndon saying, why haven't you put out PR on this? I sent a message to Namshla saying, I see you're doing this. And Namshla, yay, thank you for the support. And Lyndon's just been radio silent, so I guess he hasn't got a green light to put out the thing. I also sent that news to SAA saying that, hey guys, they're stealing your market while you're sleeping. That's it. But yes, Airlink is going to be adding a 6th weekly service to Blantyre, Malawi from October. They started this 2 years ago in September with 3 weekly services on Embraer 135s. It's now largely running on the Embraer 140, and it's going to have double to 6 weekly services. So every day day except Wednesday is going to have an Airlink flight in addition to the Malawi Airlines daily 737. I'm as happy as a pig in the mud because that gives me both morning and afternoon options if I need to get into Johannesburg. And Airlink is invariably $100 cheaper than Malawi Airlines. That's absolutely perfect. I'm just going on a business trip to Joburg or something similar to that. So I love it. Huge supporter. Fly it all the time. And with Airlink, to bring a little bit more Qatar into it, you can now earn Qatar Airways Avios for flights on Airlink flights. So I can even earn my miles for flying on Airlink rather than their own rather limited
Skybucks.
frequent flyer program. Skybucks, yes, which I'm also a member of, but I'm earning Avios now.
Okay. And the Mozambique situation, you think they shot across the bows will get the government to sort this out? Or is Airlink, is there a real risk that Airlink are going to pull out?
I don't think Airlink's going to pull out. I think Airlinks is just going to stop selling tickets in Metcash. Because that's a similar thing to what they're already doing in Malawi. They're not selling tickets in Malawi Kwacha. If you want to buy it, you've got to pay it in card, in rand or dollars. And they're relying more on their South Africa side point of sale. And look, I was in Mozambique a few months ago myself. It shocked me to see how bad the foreign exchange situation was. There is virtually no foreign exchange in the country. You cannot get it for love or money. It's just not there. And this is not something the government can snap their finger and say, give them the money. The money is not there to give them. So this is not just affecting Airlink. Airlink is the largest operator into Mozambique in terms of frequency. So obviously it is affecting them the most. But we've seen this happening in different parts of Africa. We saw this at a much higher scale in Nigeria recently. Mozambique has now got over 200 and something million dollars. I think they are now the highest country out there. Zimbabwe has issues. South African Airways has hundreds of millions of rand tied up in Zimbabwe in terms of unrepatriated funds. This is a challenge both for. In fact, we even heard this at AviaDev from Kira at ProFlight, because when we asked why was ProFlight being more reluctant to open up regional routes to places like Malawi and Zimbabwe and so forth, the answer was a very straightforward. There's no point selling tickets in those places if we can't get the money for it. And Mozambique is on that list right now, unfortunately, because of the economic situation over there. So I expect to see that Airlink will restrict sales in Metcash, but they will continue operating and continue sales in hard currency, whether that's going to be via card or whether it's going to be via South African POS.
Yeah,
we'll watch and see. Next one for you, KLM. KLM reducing Kigali and Entebbe. Oh, go on. You want to add?
I expect the largest travel agencies or travel centers in Maputo to also have a second office in Johannesburg because of the mass volume of traffic between the two cities. So definitely, like for example, say Sadhguru in Maputo will just issue tickets from Sadhguru Johannesburg instead. Yeah. So that's what's going to happen.
Well, they still have to get their own money out. It's not that simple of them taking Metcash and issuing tickets. They still have to get the money for it. But no, you're absolutely right. Because, again, while this is going into complete tangents, we won't go into it as a deep dive, the distribution across Africa has largely become less local agents, but has become more consolidated agents, where agents are looking at leveraging currency differences, cash flows, and things like that in terms of where they issue the tickets. And I was chatting with the CEO of Waka now in Nigeria last week, and that's something where he says he's actually getting decent margins. So it's actually a profit center by leveraging where to issue a ticket, rather than just issuing it in the country of where you're departing from, by choosing where you can do it with surcharges and bank differences and charges and fees, and adjusting your cash flow that you can actually get a few percentage points on it, which in many cases is better than the commissions that are being offered. So it's fascinating how this has developed. And guys like Sadhguru, guys like Waka now, Wahe Guru, Blueberry, all these guys who pop up all over in different parts of Africa, they're making a success of it. In an age where travel agents were dead, they're reinventing where the travel agent can make their money. More power to them.
Yeah, good on. All right, so Behramjee, you want to take us through KLM, what they're doing? So reducing Kigali and Entebbe from 7 to 3 weekly, but increasing Cape Town from 7 to 11, which we've already talked about.
Surprising. Yeah, this is not surprising because Entebbe and Kigali are not strategically that important to the KLM route network on an overall basis. They are there, but they don't perform that well for it to warrant flying more than five times a week at least. They've reduced it to 3 times a week, which means at the very most 1 dedicated aircraft Probably not even that because the turnaround times are short. But the traffic from Entebbe and Kigali to Amsterdam is very small in terms of point to point, which shows that majority of this traffic, vast majority actually, is transit via Amsterdam. Kigali to Amsterdam is only 7,000
and to North
passengers.
America.
Yeah, and Entebbe to Amsterdam is only 19,000 passengers. The niche that KLM offers to Entebbe in particular is the KLM UK network, where KLM flies to all the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So that helps KLM a lot in East Africa and Southern Africa, where ex-British colonies used to exist. You can go to Newcastle, Cardiff, Manchester, Birmingham, etc., via Amsterdam, and it's much more a pleasant transit experience versus clearing immigration and customs at Heathrow and then rechecking.
Exeter. My local airport, Exeter. It's connected to Amsterdam now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the main niche that KLM offers. But for Kigali to UK is not that big a market at all. But it's mainly, like Sean said, it's North America and Scandinavia and Paris that feeds the KLM flight. Cape Town for
and
sure.
I think that might be the reason why we're seeing this reduction as well, is that they're seeing Africa to North America, I expect, is going to see a significant drop over this winter and into next year. And I think this may be partly their uncertainty of how that market's going to go and their preference to deploy that capacity elsewhere on routes like Cape Town.
Yeah, Cape Town is a no-brainer for KLM in the winter season because the point
of course,
market is over.
And this was announced in May, so we covered it before. It's just noting that they're taking 4 frequencies away here, but they're adding 4 frequencies over there. One hand give it, the other hand take it away.
Yes. So
definitely,
it won't cause any stir that much. Not to worry. Whatever traffic.
And I think we're also seeing, especially in Uganda, we're seeing Brussels Airlines and Lufthansa Group strengthen their position. And I think this also may be a bit of a defensive move in that respect, where they're seeing Brussels Airline probably build up more market share. I haven't seen the trend on this. I'm just saying in terms of what I'm seeing. And also knowing the Brussels Airlines country manager in Uganda, she's an old friend of mine. She used to be the country manager in Ghana. So shout out to you, Rita, if you're listening to this. I'll send you the link. But they're very good at what they're doing. And the Lufthansa Group has made a lot of efforts in this. And KLM may just simply be taking a defensive move rather than trying to play a battle where they probably think they might lose.
Let's get to wrap up stage because it's getting late for Behramjee over there. He's looking a bit tired, seen a couple of yawns. So let's go to Cote d'Ivoire. So Air Cote d'Ivoire are taking delivery of an A330 this week. They've also loaded Paris to Abidjan from the 18th of September, although I think we've got an update on that, Behramjee. Is that right?
Yeah, the update is it's no longer flying on the 18th of September. As per the GDS system, it's now being delayed further by another 2 weeks. So from 1st of October, it's going to be flying. Nobody knows the official reason why. The only reason I can guess is that the French Civil Aviation has not yet approved their ticket sales. Because as per French Civil Aviation law,
because you know what, it's not like this hasn't been pending for the last 10 bloody years.
Yeah,
so
that is true.
You have to meet certain criteria of reconciliation when selling tickets to and from France, which has to be mentioned in your terms and conditions on the ticket itself. That could be, I'm just assuming, I don't know why. But also another reason is that even if they started on 18th September, giving a 2 weeks advance notice for a long-haul intercontinental market is way, way too soon. Even 1 month is way too soon. At least 1 month advance notice is better than 18 days. So let's see. The route will.
What's the optimum? Just give us a ballpark. 3 months?
No,
the longest you possibly can?
No, it depends on the aircraft type and the route stage length. So for a medium haul route like Abidjan, Paris, you need at least minimum 3 months advance notice to sell the flight. So, but
if I was going to open sales for this, I would be targeting middle of November. Second week of November would be when I'd be targeting. And that'd give me 2.5 months right now.
Yeah.
But I also understand the fact that they're taking this plane delivery on the 4th of September. They cannot leave this plane sitting around for 2 months. They got to do something with it. And the only route in their network that makes sense is Paris. So it's going to have to be Paris.
Also,
and has to be as soon as it arrives.
Also,
but then why?
Why
not start earlier?
No.
Go on, Behramjee.
Another reason why they need to start before October 27th is to secure historic slots for the following summer.
Partial season historics. They're going to get them anyway. The slots are available now, then no one else has them. So that's not going to be a reason why they have to start for 27th of September, 27th of October. They will get them anyway because there's plenty of churn in Paris. That's not Heathrow where, you can't get in for that. You're just going to have to tweak your times plus minus 30 minutes and you'll get it. I don't think that is driving it. I think there's the political pressure of we're taking a bloody plane right now and it's going to be a humongous. If you want to see the song and dance and literally song and dance and show and political and speeches by everyone and talk about how Cote d'Ivoire is back and the national pride in the vision of Félix Houphouët-Boigny and how everything else and a complete load of political nonsense. You're going to see that on the 4th of September when they take delivery of this plane. And then after all of that, they can't not be flying the damn thing. They can get away with 3 weeks of saying, we're doing training on it to make sure our great Ivorian pilots know this great French piece of equipment. But after that, it's going to fly. It's going to fly even empty because if they don't, everything's political in the government-owned airline.
Yes. Yeah. So now regarding the flight itself, they've released the schedule. So it calls for a late night arrival into Paris and a very early morning departure. So as you can see, the focus is not on point-to-point traffic primarily. It's basically a combination of point-to-point and connecting their entire West and Central Africa network, which is a smart thing to do.
Absolutely.
But the only downside to it is...
For a change.
Yes. But the only downside to it is that the flight departs Paris at 8 o'clock in the morning. So for point-to-point traffic, getting to Paris airport at between 5 and 5:30...
check-in is opening at 4 and 5 a.m.
Yeah, so getting to Paris airport by 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. from wherever you live, majority of the Ivory Coast passengers, they live near Orly Airport, and some live in the suburbs, which are about 2 hours drive. So that would be probably inconvenient, but they will probably have aggressive fares in the initial phase.
Perfect.
Anyways.
Yeah. It's made it very clear that it is O&D in Paris on one end, but connection at the hub on the Abidjan side. And I think that's logical because they cannot go head to head with Air France on Air France's network there. Even with an interline agreement, they're not going to be competitive. Play to your strengths. And as I said, it's a rare, sensible thing they're doing. But I think trying to get into long haul anyway it's government airlines. Where do they care? It's not just money, not theirs.
So they will be targeting I think the biggest transit market will end up being Bamako because Air France does not fly there. It's nearly 220, nearly over 200,000.
Bamako, Ouaga, all of these.
Yes, Bamako, Ouaga, Niamey, especially Bamako and Ouaga, along with Lomé and Cotonou. That will be their core focus. Bamako in particular.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, we'll watch with interest. Very last topic, which was on would have been in our rumour mill section. We've adapted that and shoved it in nowadays, but maybe we should separate it off again. And it's more than just a rumour because we've seen some pictures and handshaking, is Air Peace looking at Brazil and also taking a new 777.
Not a new 777, a very old 777.
A very old 777, new to them. What do we know about this and what's driving this whole Brazilian adventure?
Okay. We were just talking about government-owned airlines taking big planes that they really don't know what to do with. This is an example of a private sector airline taking big planes they really don't have a justification for. With all due respect to you, Noel, I still think that Delhi Abuja is too much to start with. But anyway, that's a separate side story. But yeah, Air Peace is taking this 777 with the goal of launching their Abuja flights in October, which are going to start with both Heathrow and Gatwick, with a huge amount of capacity that we have dissected before and that their chief commercial officer officer, is very upset with Behramjee for all the reasons why Behramjee said this is a very bad idea. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to fly Abuja with the 777 into London. I think that starting on day one with that many frequencies is probably unwise, and I have stressed this to Noel as recently as last week, and we maintain that position. Where did Brazil come from? It's flavor of the month. The president of Nigeria made a state visit to Brazil, and he shook hands and hugged Lula and everything else, and they flew on the delegation flew on an Airpeace 777 to Brasilia. So how can Alan Onyema not announce non-stop flights between Nigeria and Brazil when something like that's happening? He's got to be in the news and in the attention. Do I think there is a market? There is not a market. It's not a question of thinking. If you want to fly a 777 3 times a week from Nigeria to Brazil, you might as well just keep the plane on ground, light the money on fire, and still come out ahead. There is no way in hell that as Airpeace's network stands right now, where their only other long haul is London, a triangle route, which is what Alan has threatened, to fly Lagos, Rio, Sao Paulo, Lagos on a 777. My goodness, I could not think of a worse idea if I tried. And believe me, I have seen some dumb ideas from African Airlines and from Airpeace in particular, but this one might actually take the cake. So yeah, if that actually happens, I think no one would quit if he's forced to do that, but it will not be a success regardless of how they try it right now. Maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years, if they build up a network and a feeder and target markets strategically, they may have a chance. Today, for launch in November, please don't. They will put another $20 on this, similar to what I had my wagers last year. $20 says Airpeace will not be flying to Brazil by the end of 2025.
20 Shawn Mendis dollars. Who would have thought? So, Behramjee, you sticking to your guns on what you said about Airpeace before we go?
You know what? I'm going to make that different. I'm going to say 20,000 naira.
Okay. To begin with, if anybody from Airpeace is watching this podcast,
He watches. They watch it. They watch it. They watch it.
So whether you agree with us or not, facts are facts. Yes, Lagos to Sao Paulo, there is a market, 18,000 passengers in the last year. However, Lagos to Rio de Janeiro was only 1,114 passengers last year. So altogether about 20,000 passengers from Lagos to Brazil. That does not justify even once a week 777 operation. It's a long haul flight. It's not a short, medium haul flight. Also, the yields are decent, $720 one way. But the bottom line is you cannot sustain that route. Airpeace could not even sustain a route like Johannesburg, Tel Aviv, Mumbai, and Jeddah, which are much, much bigger routes. So for them to even try Brazil is an absolute illogical financial suicide.
We are doing our listeners a disservice by trying to give a logical rebuttal to an illogical idea. We just need to say, this is stupid, it's not going to work now, and leave it at that. I'm so sorry to listeners that you have to listen to us try and talk sense, because you cannot use sense to rebut nonsense.
Yes, and it's just Airpeace has admitted in the past that their financial loans are 29% interest per annum, and adding such a silly route like Sao Paulo to Lagos will only increase their operational expenses and their losses at the end of the year.
And don't forget, they're going to be taking huge expenses on launching Abuja. They're going to be doubling their long-haul flight bill by launching Abuja in October as well. There's a million reasons why this is not going to happen. I've got my 20,000 naira on the table, plus $20 on the table, depending which exchange rate is better at the time, legal and illegal. And I promise you, we are wasting our time even having this discussion. If it is to launch, it may launch in 26 or 27, but it is not going to happen by the end of 2025. And if it does, it'll fly once and that's it.
Yeah. All right. Great place to leave it.
And one last thing. And if Airpeace has another silly idea wanting to fly instead Lagos to China non-stop, that is even worse because it's double the stage length, which will mean double the losses because the yields are also much, much lower. So they should not even think of
Are you trying to give them ideas? Are you trying to give them ideas? You know that someone is going to now whisper this in Alan's ear, and they're going to start saying that, you know what, Brazil to China is the market we should be trying because now Nigeria is an associate member of BRICS. So please, don't give them ideas,
No, I didn't.
Please. Noel, please, ignore him. John, edit this part out. Just, Noel, ignore him. Please, ignore him. You've got enough work to do.
No, I said...
No, we're not editing this out. Absolutely not.
I said they should not fly to Nigeria, to China.
Yes, but when you tell Alan he should not do something, what's the first thing Alan does? He turns around and does it. You don't know this man.
Okay.
Oka does not like being told what he cannot do.
Okay.
No, absolutely. Let's leave it there. Wow, that was a big update. And that was September. It was August, September. So we will be back very soon. And we talked about new routes, route expansions, profits, mostly losses, unfortunately, and everything in between. But massive thank you to Behramjee and Sean, as always, for being so well prepared. We do this out of the love for the industry. Hopefully you find it entertaining and educational. But yes, to all our listeners, if you did enjoy the conversation, please subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on the podcast, like and subscribe. So I'm learning, Sean, slowly. But also share it with your network, share it on social media, share it through WhatsApp, get people to listen. They can listen with no subscription, no fee. We do this every single month, and we do other podcasts as well, or I do at least. And we will continue to track the industry and cover the stories that are shaping our brilliant industry, and our enthusiasm for African aviation is not waning in any way, as you can see by the big smiles after 2 hours of talking about this. And maybe one idea is we should do a quiz. Behramjee can do a quiz of what's the biggest market from we could do that. Maybe that would be quite fun. Who knows? Maybe later in the year we'll see what the uptake is and see how many people are still listening at this point. But thank you all for joining us. Thanks to you guys, and we'll speak to everybody very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.